To date, 22 African leaders were assassinated during a coup, documented all of them. France was behind it. Between 1958 and 1961, they started giving us quote-unquote independence. France did something absolutely deplorable. Made the former, and I'm going to use the word former loosely, French colonies, because they still are colonized, signed a document which they called the Pact for the Continuation of Colonization. Dig this. On one hand, we're giving you your independence, but on the other hand, sign this document that you are agreeing to continue to be colonized. So two countries said, no way, Jose, we aren't doing this, Guinea and Mali. The French could not understand it. How could an African country dare not want to be affiliated with France? So in their anger, history tells us that they went into those two countries, took everything that they thought they had brought. To hear Mugabe put it, they even took the last teaspoon and the last chair. Proceeded to pour concrete into the sewage pipes, completely devastating the two economies. This was also done as a way of letting the other countries know that should you refuse to sign this document, this is the fate that awaits you. So the rest of the country signed. Fast forward, the pact for the continuation of colonization remains in place. What is special about this? The Pact for the Continuation of Colonization said, 1, you Africans, you do not know how to manage your money. You shall deposit 85% of your bank reserves with the French Central Bank under the control of the French Minister of Finance. The French government will take all your monies, collectively invest your monies in the French stock market under the French name. And you don't have to know what the returns are. Should you wish to access some of your money, keep in mind that countries are now left with only 15% of their reserves. You have to submit your country's financial report. And if approved, you get to access up to 20% of your deposits from the previous year as a loan at commercial interest rates. I'm going to repeat that. Should you want to access some of your own money, you have to submit your own country's financial report. And if approved, you get it as a loan at commercial interest rate. So you go from having a humongous credit with France to now owing France for borrowing your own money. A loan that you'll never be able to finish paying. They also said, all your minerals discovered and yet to be discovered, French companies have the first right of refusal. You go to those countries today, all major contracts, French companies have the first right of refusal. The water supply, the power supply, the mining fixtures, the oil rigs, roads construction, airports, French companies have the first right of refusal. If anything is left, the people in your country may get it. They also said, your military can only be trained by France. You can only purchase military equipment from France. France shall have military presence in your country and can invade your country without notice if France feels that her interests in your country are being violated. What constitutes a violation? If you decide to pull from the pact. Keep in mind, as part of the financial situation, France also created a special currency just for West African countries and Central African countries that is called a CFA. And that France is the only country that can print your money. So a violation would constitute an African leader saying, I no longer want my money printed by France. I'm going to start printing my own money. That's a violation, and it can call for France invading your country. In the past many years, we've had 67 coups in Africa out of 26 countries. Of the 26 countries, 16 coups were 16 countries were former French colonies. To date, 22 African leaders were assassinated during a coup, documented all of them. France was behind it, simply because France felt they were quote-unquote threatening French interests by wanting to pull out of this horrible, horrible pact. Nothing has changed. Countries are still depositing their funds to France. French companies still have first right of refusal. So if you are an African president, newly appointed, your first day in office, your chief of staff comes to you and reads to you the do's and don'ts as stipulated by the Pact for the Continuation of Colonization. Mr. President, you have given up your financial resources. You have given up control of your natural resources. You have given up your military. What power do you have? May I take you back to the question? When people start the conversation with corruption in Africa, I give it to you. I'm not disagreeing. We have corruption in Africa. But who doesn't have corruption on earth? Which country, which continent, which region is free of corruption? And yet what happens in Africa, so much light is shone on it. And when the same thing happens elsewhere, it's minimized. You see, I liken to today, because of the Pact for the Continuation of Colonization, France alone, that little bitty country, is taking out of Africa over $500 billion. Over $500 billion. And by the time they finish investing that money into the French stock market, they're realizing trillions of dollars in any given year. Pack that. The watchdogs for corruption are saying out of Africa, 50 billion gets out of the continent from corruption. Now you got two thieves. You have a thief with a briefcase with 50 billion and another thief, a small thief, with a briefcase with 500 billion. Which thief are you going to go after? The world wants you to be stuck with a thief with 50 billion and not the thief with 500 billion that's going to become trillions of dollars. Do you quickly realize how the 50 billion becomes a crumb under the table? And we are meant to fight each other for which one of the brothers has gotten a larger chunk under the table. So that way we never have to get on the table and talk about not a 3-course meal, not a 5-course meal, not a 10-course meal. I call it a 100-course meal going on the table. The question I have is, why has it been so difficult for us as Africans to say enough is enough? How long are we going to keep watching this carnage go on and we say nothing? It goes back to the mind. It goes back to that fear. It goes back to that sense of inferiority. And I go back to the diagnosis I made when I went to Washington. That until we black people understand that we are suffering from the legacy of colonization, that we are suffering from the legacy of slavery, that while we may have lost the shackles in our legs and our hands, the shackles of the mind continue. Until we realize that we are a wounded people and we need healing, nothing about our circumstances is going to change. We are sick people. But to be sick, first you must realize and accept that you're sick. How do you go to the doctor if you don't think you're sick? We are not only in the doctor's waiting room on outpatient basis. We are not even in the hospital in a general ward. As Black people, we are in the intensive care. And we need to realize that. United Nations, it is a body that's supposed to be the watchdog for human rights violations. France is on the UN Security Council. And you see me pick up on France. There are other colonizers too, who are still colonizing Africa. But France did something extraordinary through this pact. We're talking cold, hard cash out of Africa. That we must stop. And immediately, we must do that. So France remains as a member of the UN Security Council. And yet France today remains one of the biggest perpetrators of human rights violations in Africa. And everybody is giving it, the world is giving it a blind eye. France remains the biggest risk to peace and security in Africa today. And nobody is talking about it. Our people must know the truth and nothing but the truth. That no more shall we continue to be fed lies or be fed information that the powers that be feel we must know and stop there. We will know the truth.